Thank you very much, everybody, to be there this morning. I'm really glad to welcome you to our session dedicated to energy production on islands and isolated territories. This is the first webinar of two. As you know, we also have another webinar organized the 9th of December regarding energy consumption. So I know that most of you have registered for this webinar. It will be also really interesting. So before beginning, I just ask you to keep your video shut and your micro muted when during the session. I am Sebastian Dalmas. I'm a partner at Edenware. We are a French and Spanish company expert in sustainable and innovative projects, and we are working with BDI on the coordination and communication of the ICE project. So as I've told you, we have plenty of things to share with you this morning, and timing is quite tight. So what I suggest is we will let the presentation go on, and if you have any question or comments, please use the chat during the session, and we will see how we can answer your questions or your comments during the session, or at the end of the session we will have time to discuss together. So we will begin with the Glenor Islands, and we will talk about battery storage optimization, and this is Joël Nedelec from ENAG who will take the lead for this use case. Then we will go to La Guadeloupe, where Félix Gorentin from Farwind will explain the opportunity study they are doing at the moment on Marie-Galante. And then we will end up with the island of Molène, coming back to the Channel Islands with Nicolas Ruiz from Guinea Energy. We will talk about the techno-economic study they are doing to implement a tidal turbine on the island. And then at the end, if we have some time, anyone it will be able to come up with some questions and answers. So I will let Hélène present and welcome you and introduce the ICE project. Perfect, Hélène. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I am Hélène Morin. I am the ICE project coordinator, and I am the head of the European Affairs Department at BDI, the Regional Development Agency of Brittany. First of all, I would like just to give you a brief overview of the ICE project. ICE project is focusing on the isolated community. This kind of community or this kind of target really faces some specific energy challenges. They are not connected to the mainland, and they are also really dependent on imported sources of energy, such as the fuel or fossil energy sources. What we really want to do with the ICE project is to find some solutions to decrease the price of the energy and to have a less expensive green energy offer to develop the source of energies and to decrease the price of this. And what we also really want to do with the isolated community is to have a high level of security and to provide the consumer with a reliable energy system. What we have used or what kind of approach we have implemented during these 5 years of project is really a systemic approach. I mean by that we wanted to cover the different aspects. We wanted to work on the production, to find some new source of energy for the isolated communities, but also we work on the storage, and we will have some example later on given by the companies that have tested some solutions, and also we work with the consumer to see whether we can work and whether we can decrease the energy consumption on the island. And this is really these entire systems that we have implemented to make sure that we will have a higher impact, and we use the different levers on the approach. With the project, we targeted two different communities. On one hand, we have the companies offering some specific solution, an innovative one, such as, for instance, the LoRa system or some specific objects, and delivering information to the consumers to make sure that they are aware of what the consumption is in the houses, for instance. And also we worked with different territories, having some specific willing and wishing for the energy system, and how to make how to improve the system on the island. And our job was really focused, and our activities was really to focus and to make links between these two different targets. On one hand, the offer, and on the other hand, the demand, and make sure that they can meet and they can respond to each other. And now, in fact, we are at the nearly end of the project, and we have good impacts and we have good results. And now what we want to do is really to promote and to replicate the solutions that we have identified and that we already have implemented in the different territories. So we really want to share our experience with the different islands all over the world, and also to foster our results. So I will leave the floor now to the experiences that we had during this project, and I hope you will enjoy the presentation. I wish you a good workshop.
Thank you very much, Hélène, for this introduction. Most of the people here know the ICE project, but it's always really interesting to come back and understand what are the objectives and of the project, and especially what we are willing to do in the future. So thank you very much, Hélène, and Peter. You can go on with your presentation.
Thank you very much. So my name is Peter Connor. I work at the University of Exeter. So we were in charge of delivering on some of the islands that are part of the ICE project, and on delivering basically a key area for us was to look at developing a general methodology. So first, sort of having a little overview of island energy issues. Roughly speaking, about 10% of global population live on islands. It's just under 5% in the EU, but that's still quite a lot of people, obviously. And there are particular issues which impact islands, which probably most people on the call are familiar with, which is you're talking about a smaller scale of generation, and that creates all sorts of issues with you only have a single supplier, you have poor economies of scale, so the cost tends to be higher. Particularly, obviously, this is the case if islands aren't connected to larger grids. And obviously, it's a case where countries are independent as well, and the island itself is a key part of the country rather than a sort of island on the edge of a mainland. And that can mean that electricity and other energy costs can be very high, because diesel for transport and for electrical generation, and heating oils for heating spaces have to be imported, and they are imported at high cost. And as a corollary, it tends to be that there's also fairly high fossil fuel emissions linked into that. So historically, options for alternatives to diesel have been pretty limited, and while the cost of renewables has remained high, then that's not really been a valid alternative. And what we wanted to look at is the new paradigm, which is that we've all seen over the last 10 years, I think the cost of solar has come down by about 80%. I think one statistic I saw recently was that since 2007, that the cost of PV panels has come down by something like 96%. So we've had this massive change in the economics of renewables. And at the same time as solar, we've had these cost reductions in wind energy, and now we're starting to see these cost reductions in storage opportunities. And that basically, we wanted to look into that new paradigm and look at how maybe we've changed enough in the way those technologies that we can basically power a whole island just using those technologies, and still maintain the reliability and security of supply that is essential, but also to sort of cut those fossil fuel emissions and potentially even cut the costs. So we basically looked on that basis, and our task within ICE was to come up with a general methodology. So a document that is reasonably understandable to the sort of the non-expert, that can be picked up off the shelf and applied on different islands, rooted in the theory, but understandable to people. And then we would test that general methodology on the island of Ushant off the coast of Brittany, and then we'd test it a bit further by looking at other islands in the Channel region. So that's basically what we did. So the Ushant report is available, and the general methodology is available to anybody who wants it on the ICE site, and we're just sort of rounding out and dotting the I's on the other island assessments. So we looked at another 5 different islands in the general area of the Channel. So the Isles of Scilly and Lundy off the UK, and then Molène and Chorzy off the French coast, and then the Channel Island of Sark is our final island assessment. And we were able to come up with what we think are credible 100% renewable scenarios for 5 out of those 6 islands. So the only one that we don't think is doable 100% is the Isles of Scilly, where there's quite a lot of pressure on land, and some basic issues in terms of running the whole system. And there's 5 different islands there rather than just one. So that's one of the key things that sort of limited, we think would be a limiting factor, would be land availability. So if you're going to put solar in particularly, then you need a decent amount of available land to get to 100%. We are going to have to see the use of batteries. So all of our 100% scenarios rely on batteries to a certain extent. And obviously batteries have 3 technologies of wind, solar, and batteries, and batteries is the one that's still pretty expensive. So that's going to be a determining factor. But actually, we're probably talking about no more than 2 megawatts of battery capacity on any of these islands. It has tended to be, we did test for non-wind and solar. We looked at tidal, particularly on Ushant and in one of the other islands. And there is an issue there that it's just not mature enough. I think it's possible that in 10 years, we might have other technologies that are mature enough to play a part in this. But our scenarios that sort of seem to work are basically largely wind, solar, and battery based. And there is an issue there that islands without those resources might have problems, but also islands where those things aren't acceptable to the public, it's going to be a problem. And we don't think that's an issue for most solar. Land is an issue for the solar, but public acceptability for the wind. And we have been doing some work on another Channel island in the last few weeks, and there's very strong reaction against wind. It's not popular, basically. So that might be an issue there. It is an interesting thing with the tidal. We don't see it as practical in the next 10 years. And I am part of a wave energy and marine energy department here. And we don't think it's practical, but there's a lot of people on some of these islands who think that something that's like tidal are going to work. And there could be something that they adopt now when that's probably not a realistic option. So other conclusions we drew, I'm going to jump over the sort of the scenarios and go straight to summing up the conclusions. One of the key things that we came up with that's really important to this is the setting of objectives within the island community. One of the things that made Ushant a really good target island for us was that the island and its community had already committed to 100% renewables. So they were already up for trying to get to those targets, and I think that's really important. And engaging with the local community is really essential. And it's been a little bit of a problem for us because we've not been able to visit some of the islands as much as we would have liked because of COVID, obviously, for the last 18 months. So that's been an issue. And we really think that's important. It's finding out what communities want. So what are they prepared to accept? So generally people who are paying quite a bit of money already aren't going to accept a price bump, is one conclusion we have. But it's also whether they'll accept wind energy, whether they'll accept other technologies. Will they accept impacts on reliability? We don't think they will, generally speaking. And the other reason for contacting people on the island and building relationships is the importance of data access. So getting energy consumption data from the energy companies and getting a network map is pretty fundamental in understanding what you're going to have to do, because that's the network particularly is going to have an impact on where you can site new renewable energy generation. So that's a big deal, and that it might not happen. It's companies who are currently supplying the energy may well have an issue with giving you that information. Not having it is problematic for being able to model whether you can provide enough energy at the right times from the renewable energy side of things. The other thing that's important, I think, is one of the things that's been covered by some of our colleagues in ICE is to try and play up the local benefits. So you're not going to get a huge number of jobs on islands relating to energy generation, but you might get some, and that can still be important. And it can have an effect on people's thinking about the technology if there are going to be local benefits, even if they're not huge, even if they don't apply to the people that are thinking about it. If they know somebody who's got a job because of it, that can be a big deal. But lower prices obviously can be a huge deal if there's the potential for dropping the prices. One of the islands we've looked at, Sark, has a base price for electricity of 58 pence a kilowatt hour, which is incredibly high. So that's obviously something like, I don't know, 65 euro cents a kilowatt hour. So that's a tremendously high amount of money to be paying on a bill, where it's absolutely fundamental to water supply and things like that on those islands. And it's the chance for lower prices as well as emission reduction can be a huge motivator. So one of the key things we would say if you're looking at islands is get your experts to visit, talk to people, start early with talking to people is hugely important. Other things that have been big issues for us, regulatory frameworks can throw up some really unexpected effects. So we knew this was going to be an issue when we started, but it was pretty unexpected actually how much of an issue the regulatory framework that applies in France particularly was, and the socialization of costs meant that the people on the islands weren't meeting their electricity costs, somebody else was. And that meant they were less motivated to try and look for cheaper alternatives because they were already basically being subsidized by the rest of the French state. And there were issues with then the company that was bearing the costs being subsidized for them, and so there was a lack of motivation for looking for alternatives. So you had a kind of a weird sort of regulatory capture that threw up issues with how you actually finance the change. One of the other big issues, of course, is whether you have an independent island versus an island that's part of a larger nation. And generally speaking, there's this potential for subsidization if you're part of a larger nation, but there's also the potential that you have a regulatory framework which was designed for basically large centralized generators feeding a large amount of electricity to a large population. And if you're a small island that doesn't have a link to the mainland, then that's going to have all sorts of impacts on how it's operated and what your energy supply looks like. And maybe that you're subsidized, but maybe that you're not, and that you have all sorts of problems. If you're an independent country, an independent island, like for example Sark in our study, then you have a lot of different complicated issues that will have an impact, but potentially a lot of motivators as well for change. One of the other things I would say, we came up with 100% scenarios for these islands, but I would say it's not going to be possible to get 100% renewables on a lot of these places. And it is still possible to have a fairly diverse energy mix that includes some renewables, some low carbon generation, and maybe that's better than no low carbon generation. So do think about, can we get to 30%? Can we get to 50%? Can we get to 70%? Rather than go all out for 100%. There's lots of room for future work in this area. So one of the things we wish we'd studied a bit more is integrating heat pumps as basically as an energy efficiency technology. So there's an interesting effect on the French islands that the subsidization of electricity means that people on the island are paying relatively low prices relating to the actual cost of electrical generation. And so it makes perfect sense for them to have a heat pump in their house rather than be paying for diesel generation, because they've or just straight up using electricity, because a lot of them, because the price of electricity is so low in France relative to cost on the islands, it makes a huge amount of sense to just have electrical heating. And if you've already got electrical heating, then there's a lot to be said for putting a heat pump in and getting an energy efficiency of 300 or 400% from that heat pump. So there's a big case for doing that. And the issue then is who's actually going to pay for the heat pump, and how's that going to get subsidized, and how's that going to get covered in terms of the upfront capital cost. But there's also a case for other energy efficiency, and it's hugely important when you model that you actually look at what's the potential for energy efficiency in houses and in terms of the systemic energy efficiency as well. We would like to see more investigation of electric vehicles. It wasn't a big deal on some islands. On a relatively small island, it's not really a big issue. On one of our islands, there's no actual transport. Everybody goes by bike, so cars are banned. So it's not a big issue everywhere, but potentially electric vehicles have a lot to add to a model in terms of both consumption of electricity and how much is consumed, but also whether there's potential for a storage mechanism there and actually having that as part of the system. In the future, it would be useful to look at alternative resources that aren't wind and solar. If we start to see some technologies come through in other kinds of generation, then it would be useful to try and build some of those in, and that gives more islands more opportunity to generate from those technologies. We'd also like to look more at smart energy technologies. We sort of ended up, we started off thinking about smart, and we ended up shifting a little bit. So we were looking at integration of large volumes of renewables, but looking at more at smart energy technologies and how they interact with people is probably another key thing that would bear a lot more research. So those are the areas we think need more work in order to think about islands going over to smarter, more low carbon systems. I'm going to wind it up there. I think we're going to take questions at the end.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Lots of answers, lots of key answers for our project ICE, and of course many things to do in the future. So happy to discuss with all of you, of course, about these lessons learned and about possible solutions and issues you can come up with. So thank you, Peter, for this first part. We're going now to the use cases, and I will ask Joël Nedelec from ENAG to go on with the experimentation we are having on the islands of Les Glénans.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I will share my screen. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Joël Nedelec, working for ENAG. Today I will talk about battery storage optimization for the smart grid of Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans. A short presentation of ENAG. ENAG is a French company born in 1946. We've been working in renewable energy since this time, and we design and manufacture in France electric motor, generator, battery charger, inverter, power conversion systems, smart grid systems, and also electric propulsion for marine and railway application. I show you short some experiences in renewable energy. We've made equipment for vertical axis wind turbine, smart grid Les Glénans, conversion energy system. Also equipment for offshore wind farm substation, for wave energy converter. And what you can see on the slide is a tidal turbine for HydroQuest, where we manufacture the power conversion module for this tidal turbine. And this tidal turbine was made in 2018, and it has been working for 3 years now. Just a short close-up on the power conversion module we have done. It's a 1 megawatt power conversion module, and we manufacture the mechanical frame, but also the conversion system, the cooling system, and the PLC to give the communication between the whole system. Now I'm going to Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans, the purpose of our project. For people who don't know where is Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans, it's a small island in the southwest coast of Brittany. It's about 10 nautical miles from the first harbor. It's a non-connected area, so it's an off-grid island, I would say. On this island, there are about 20 houses, 2 restaurants, and 1 international diving center. And this island belongs to the town of Fouesnant in Brittany. The project is about the power plant of Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans. The power plant of Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans was refitted in 2018 by ENAG. We made this project for Enedis, who's electric energy supplier in France, and for the town of Fouesnant. So we renewed the power electronic conversion and the system, the energy management system of this power plant. And this power plant is made of 1 wind farm of 20 kilowatts. And there is also a solar farm of 40 kilowatts, 2 gensets for emergency. Each genset is 48 kilowatts. And there is 1 battery bank of 320 kilowatt hour. And since 2018, we have measured that almost 85% of the energy consumed on the island comes from renewable energy. So it's a good result, but it's not enough. We expect to have close to 100% energy consumed coming from renewable energy. So we, ENAG, and our customer, we thought that a way to reach the target of 100% was to do some improvement on the system, on the power plant. And the purpose of our project was to see and calculate how the creation of a second battery park and a design of a new algorithm for charge and discharge for the batteries, how these 2 improvements can be sufficient to reach the target of 100% autonomy on the renewable energy for this small island. So the first aspect, the creation of a second battery park, we think it can give us an upgrade of the capacity and the autonomy range. It will allow us suitable cycle of charge and discharge, and it will improve the lifespan of battery. It will improve the reliability of electric network by redundancy. When you have two battery park, if one is switched off, you still have the first battery park to supply energy. It will help for the maintenance of the power plant, and at the end, it will minimize the use of genset. It will save fuel, pollution, and it will be a major aspect to reach the target of 100%, we think. The studies was made on the base of lead acid battery park, to precise. The other aspect of our project is to develop an algorithm about charge and discharging mode of the 2 battery park. We noticed that the production coming from the renewable energy, the sun and the wind, are variable and predictable, but sometimes and most of the time it doesn't fit with the need of the battery. And so we have to develop this algorithm by software in the PLC to make the energy production fitting the charging mode available to the lead-acid battery to optimize the energy. So in the next slide, I made a comparison between the current situation in the case one, when you have one battery park of 320 kilowatt hour. And this situation, the DOD is about 50%. For people who don't know what DOD is a depth of discharge, and it will set the usable part of energy that is stocked in the battery. So currently we have a DOD of 50%, more or less, and by using 2 battery packs, we expect, and having a good management system for the charging and discharging mode of the battery, we will increase the DOD, and then we will increase also the usable energy that can be stored in the battery. So at the end, we expect to have a margin of plus 96 kilowatt-hour, between 96 kilowatt-hour and 128 kilowatt-hour more energy available on the power plant. And this energy available will help us to go through the period where energy is needed not for starting the genset. This almost 100 kilowatt-hour will allow us not to start the genset to supply electricity on this small island. So as a conclusion, we expect fuel savings, and we expect the fuel saving represented by 96 kilowatt-hour. We think 96 kilowatt-hour will be more or less on the higher consumption day, more or less 64 liters by day of fuel. And for the higher consumption period, June, July, August, it represents almost 6,000 liters of fuel saved on the higher consumption period, because Saint-Nicolas-des-Glénans is an area in the summer with there are a lot of people coming in the summer. In a larger period, from May to September, average fuel saving will be more or less around 50 liters, and we expect to have close to 8,000 liters saved of fuel on this period, which represents a good scale of analysis for this power plant. So what we think at the end of this study, at the end of this project, is that almost 8,000 liters of fuel, it's a big step. It's a big margin in a way to reach 100% autonomy on this small island. And we didn't take account of the shipping cost and the shipping fuel needed to bring all this 8,000 liters of fuel. So this number, this value of fuel is can be considered as a low value of fuel saved for at the end for this territory, this island. So there is the influences of the system, of the improvement of the system can be larger, can be bigger. And yeah, these two improvements, we think it can be a major step to reach 100% renewable energy supply on this island. And the system can be suitable for lithium battery also. It will be different, but I would say it can be suitable for this another kind of battery. Okay, thank you. I'm over now.
Thank you very much, Joel, for this presentation.
You're welcome.
It's clear that battery storage is really important for isolated territories and especially islands, and I'm pretty sure that lots of isolated territories would be interested in what you've been doing on this topic. So thank you very much for this presentation.
Just a short thanks to Anaïs Turpot and Mathilde Conan for this project.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anaïs,
PMBA to be there to be able to go on and promote this kind of solutions. Now I will be pleased to ask Félix Gorentin from Farwind Energy to present the use case. We are crossing the Atlantic and going to La Guadeloupe to other kind of very interesting solutions. So Félix, I leave you the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Perfect. So my name is Félix Gorentin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Farwind Energy. So in brief, Farwind Energy, we are a technology company. We are a deep tech company developing an energy ship, so a new production system specific for islands notably. So what we do is to harvest the far offshore wind energy resource, so farther than 200 kilometers from the coast, and then we come back to the shore to deliver the power. So basically, the best resource, so the wind resource is best offshore. So here we can see on the map, it's a global scale map, and you can see that in red we have the best resource, in red and in orange. And we can see that the farther you go offshore, the better the wind resource is. And typically here we are close to the Guadeloupe, and we have here the trade winds. So sadly known, obviously, but here we have very stable wind all year long, typically close to 7 meters of 7 meters per second of speed. So there's a very tremendous potential, notably for around islands. And our target is to what we target is typically so location where we are 200 kilometers from the shore or with high water depths, typically with more than 200 meters. And sadly, conventional offshore wind turbines cannot operate there. So myself, I've been working the offshore wind business for 10 years and been involved in the far wind technology since 2 years now. So we see the far wind technology, which is represented there. So typically it's an energy ship, as the next generation for the far offshore wind energy capture. So it requires less infrastructure. We are not green connected, and it doesn't require to be removed. So we basically can move, such as a race ship, and optimize our route to go where the wind is actually. And to jump on the comment of Peter earlier, we are able to cope with land scarce islands. So we see ourselves as let's say the next generation after we deployed most of the, let's say, the PV and the onshore wind that we can on islands. I think we can get one step further with getting offshore wind energy back from the far shore to the islands. So the technology, the key characteristics are there. So basically it's a ship, it's a sailing ship. Those are sails. And actually when we rotate them and when the wind is coming from the side here, it propels basically the ship in the axis of the ship. So those are sailing ship, and we will then generate energy through those turbines that will actually slow down the ship and produce energy. It's like it's exactly the same way that racing ships are producing their energy with a small water turbines. And then, since we are not grid connected, then we will store the energy on board, either in batteries, but we can also do other energy carriers such as hydrogen or methanol, for instance. So typically the ship is 80 meters long and 25 meters wide. The idea we can so this can produce energy instead of using fossil fuels on islands, and typically you can save around 6,000 tons of CO2 per year, CO2 emission per year. And one of the real plus of the technology is, instead of an offshore wind turbine that will wait for its wind to come, we can actually go and take the wind where it is. So it's what we call planification of routes or weather routing. And last but not least, we are not an installation, so we don't use a specific lease of land offshore, but we rather move like a ship. So now let's get a bit closer to Guadeloupe. So Guadeloupe, it's in the French Caribbean, so located here. The population is around 269,000 people. And it's slightly decreasing. It's interesting to understand as well, because it has an impact on the consumption, obviously. And there's a commitment to get 100% of renewable power generation by 2030, which is a challenge. But we believe we have a part to play in that commitment. And obviously it's a French overseas territory. So as Peter mentioned as well, there is less interest from, let's say, local people because they pay already the same electricity price as in the metropolitan area. So in those locations, the people that you need to talk with are the representative of the states typically, and we'll get back to that. To get an overview of what is the energy production in Guadeloupe, most of it is still from fossil fuels. There's obviously a strong push from renewables like solar PV and wind, but there's still a production from oil and a bit of coal that has been shifted now to wood. Between 2018 and 2030, so we need to see a shift from towards renewables, and we need to see also the average production cost decreasing as well. That's one of the targets. So what they plan is to reduce, reduce a bit, shift the energy production, but we still need to have one. So on top of what we have currently in 2018, what we had is 1,400 gigawatt hour of energy. That's also a lot of cost, obviously, every year. So, and this is the typical energy demand for a typical week. So for a typical day, sorry. Here we can see different day of the week, either working days or during the weekends. And what we can see here is that there are actually two demand peaks, one at midday and one at night. So one that can be covered by solar PV, and the other one needs to be covered by other solution. And typically, what's interesting to see here is also the peak load. So we are closer between 200 and 250 megawatt of peak load. Typically, and one of the energy ship can provide typically up to 10 megawatt of power and 40 megawatt hour a day. So basically, what we look at is different locations. So basically, we've been working with the port of Guadeloupe, which is called Port Caraïbe, and we've been looking at their infrastructure. We had a very good opportunities that they have available infrastructure with deep sea ports and a lot of availability on those ports. So the main port is located here in Pointe-à-Pitre. We have a port made for sugarcane, notably in Marie-Galante, another port close to Basse-Terre. And typically, the way the system operates, they do rounds. So it could be 8 hours charging cycle, and then you charge 12 megawatt-hour of battery capacity, and then you go back to the shore. One of the key interests of the technology is that we can achieve a very high capacity factor, so typically over 60%. And obviously, the longer we go offshore, the better the capacity factor will be. One order of magnitude that you can keep in mind is one ship is equivalent to typically 0.6% of the island's electricity consumption. So if we take a look, let's say a step back, and we look at the Caribbean, here is the real resource that we're looking at. And this is Météo France Arome data from 2019. So we can see here actually the wake effect of the islands. And there is a very good real resource between those islands. So typically here, typically there. And so it's a perfect location to deploy a ship that needs actually to move to capture always the best wind. So as I mentioned, good wind speeds, so stable winds all year long. And there is little maritime traffic, typically 50 kilometers off the coast where we will operate. And so the infrastructure is available, and we can do weather routing. So it is really an ideal location to deploy energy ships in large water depths. So typically here between Guadeloupe and the Dominique, we will have typically more than 500 meters of water depth. So taking a look at the actual project, how we manage a project. So this is a typical stakeholder mapping for an offshore wind project. Data is from DNVGL. Here we are the project developer and technology provider. And we need to discuss with local people. So typically we started with the port of Guadeloupe. So we did a 1-year study with them already. We're still progressing. We've been talking with the local government as well, so Région Guadeloupe, and we're progressing to integrate notably the multi-energy plan. We need to discuss with the grid operators, so which is EDF SEI in this case. Actually, the Commission de Régulation de l'Énergie are the one. There's 2 ways to get actually a feed-in tariff in Guadeloupe. Either you go through an auction, typically for more mature technology like solar or wind, or you can also do a one-to-one negotiation with the Commission de Régulation de l'Énergie, so the Energy Commission in France, and they will, if that's all right, and the price is the price and the value that you provide is sufficient, then they will ask EDF SEI to actually buy the energy from you and deliver it to clients. Obviously, the last point are all the permitting topics that we deal with the Direction de la Mer. So all the people looking at offshore use. So the critical path for Far Wind Energy is first integrate the multi-year planning so that we can get a feed-in tariff. Then look obviously at the port infrastructure, look at the electrical infrastructure, then also move on with the authorization and eventually get a feed-in tariff. Our target for this is end of 2022. So we are still pushing hard and being there every month or so. So we try to follow Peter's advice to visit as needed. So just to give a 5-year roadmap where we are, what we do. So the ID generation was made in 2016, and there has been 5 years of R&D, first in the École Centrale de Nantes, and then inside Far Wind Energy. Far Wind Energy has been founded in 2020, and this is one of the ship, a 6-meter long ship that we've been deploying. Our target is to do the final investment decision for the full-scale energy ship, so 80-meter long, end of 2022. This will be built in 2023 and commissioned in 2024, so most probably in Guadeloupe. So it will feature 2 MW of power and 10 GW of kilowatt-hour of energy production per year. And rapidly we'll move on with other ships. So with the first fleet that will start operating in 2027. So 3 markets, just very briefly. The niche market is electricity. We start with this market, but the technology is even more relevant when we talk about green hydrogen or other energy carrier, because we can stay very long time, so 1 week typically of the coast. And in the long term, we believe that by being in the middle of the Atlantic, we can produce also very low price fuel, e-fuel, like methanol or ammonia. And just to finish, so key message to bring home. So Farwind, we are a deep tech company. We are 12 people now, moving faster, and we are hiring. So please get in touch. We are co-developing a demonstration project with Port Caraïbes and Région Guadeloupe. The next step is the integration in the multi-year energy plan. So there's but we believe there's a good opportunity there. The local team will start operation in the first quarter next year, and the commissioning is planned in 2024. So the key benefit that we bring are threefold. First, we bring renewable energy, obviously, from wind. We bring also power. That's very useful, for instance, for shore-to-ship power, which will be mandatory for ports. And we also bring storage, and this enables further integration of other renewables, such as solar PV. And finally, so 1 ship is typically covers the electricity needs for 2,000 households. So thanks for your time, and happy to answer any question.
Thank you very much, Felix. I'm actually very impressed about the company and see how, deep tech and innovative companies are also the future to decarbonize our world, and especially islands. So thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I'm pretty sure that lots of territories would be interested in the future to analyze better how it could suit for their needs. And now I will ask Nicolas Ruiz from Guinard Energy. We are going to cross again the Atlantic and come back to our channel area and talk about use case on the island of Molène. So Nicolas, if you can go on with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Nicolas Ruiz. I'm the CTO of Guinard Energy Nouvelle. So first, I will briefly present Guinard Energy Nouvelle companies. So this is a French company. We are based in French Brittany at Brest. We have developed a hydrokinetic turbine dedicated to isolate area and non-interconnected, of course, area. We have designed this turbine with the main concern of regarding installation that we can have on this type of site, and to also minimize the impact of the environment. Around this product, of course, we have developed our competencies in terms of hydrokinetic resources assessment and feasibility studies. And we propose to the client at the end the installation and the maintenances of our product. So far we have developed both size of hydrokinetic turbine. Compared to other manufacturers, we have decided to start with a small scale turbine. So the first one is a P66 turbine. We developed 2.5 kilowatt of power, and the second one is a P154 turbine. We developed 20 kilowatt of power, and these both type of turbine and size can cover mainly situation for non-interconnected area. In terms of installation, as you can see in the picture in this slide, The both turbine can be installed on gravity-based foundation or below floating structure in order to be modular. And we can add, of course, rotating geosystem in order to follow the main current flow for tidal application. In parallel of the development of this turbine, of course, we have developed the conversion and regulation electrical unit, which is able to also combine the electricity, the power generated by the turbine and the power generated by other renewable resources like PV panel. And in order to be able to provide electricity 24 hours, 7 days, but we need to be able to balance the energy produced and the energy consumed. As you can see in the curve, in fact, the consumption of the user are not constant during the day, of course. You have a first peak in the morning, the second peak in the midday, and during the evening. Means that we need for this isolate area to propose a global production system able to sustain this peak and to manage energy all during the day and night, to store it when your production is higher than the consumption, and of course to restitute this production during the peak in the evening. In terms of track record, we have already installed several turbines on several sites in France, but also in French Guiana, in Madagascar, in Togo. The installation is ongoing, and we have several discussions in other countries. And as you can see, for French Guiana and Madagascar, in this both project, we create a grid totally. So now, after this brief presentation, I will come back to the POMO project awarded by ICE program. So this project consists, in fact, to analyze the resources, the tidal resources that we have close to Molen Island. So Molen Island, here you have the situation is at the extreme west of French Brittany. The closer harbor, consequent harbor is Brest, and you have a distance of around 20 nautical miles between Molen and Brest. In terms of resident, 150 to 250 in function of the season live at Molen. And the electricity of this island is only supplied by genset. And the consumption of gas oil, diesel, is 1,000 liters by day. And of course, this fuel, this diesel, is transported by boat from Brest. Means that the cost of electricity is very high. You can see also, so the area of interest that we have selected around Molen, we have selected a very close area in order to reduce after the cost and of submarine cable and installation, but also we have considered to be a little shelter of the main swell. So for this project, we use the following methodology. So first, we build a high resolution numerical model in order to be able to select the best location for the installation of hydrokinetic turbine, which was the second task. And in a third one, based on the several area selected and analysis done, we perform a power resources assessment and a preliminary installation analysis. So first, to create this high resolution model, we need to generate, of course, a grid. This is a non-linear grid, evolutive one. Far to the area of concern, we have high size of meshing, and as closer you get to the area of interest, we reduce the mesh size to 10 meters. Then, based on this mesh, we projected it to the bathymetry, and we have used Telemac 2D software in order to propagate the tidal wave. And we did that from the nip to spring tide in order to cover all the water elevation. And after, the model has been validated by comparison to the water level of all the harbor around the area of interest, like Ouessant, L'Anille-Butte, and Le Conquet. So here you can see the result for one spring tide of the current during the rising tide and during the ebb tide. And you can see that we have several, in fact, current stream close to the highland. So this slide just to show you the interest, in fact, to develop this, to have developed this high resolution model. At the left, you can see the current model based on the CHOM data. So CHOM is a French Navy hydrographic and oceanographic services. This, there are a lot of data issued by the CHOM that are mainly used for navigation utilization. So us, for tidal resources assessment, we need to have a more precise result and in order to select the best location. And you can see here the difference in the both picture. In terms of selection of the interesting site, in fact, we use the following criteria. So first, of course, this is the main one is the current velocity, because it's directly linked after to the power that the tidal turbine will produce. The bathymetry is very important also because we need to have a minimum water depth to install the turbine, but also all the slope variation of the seabed is important for gravity-based installation, the presence of big rock onto the seabed. The distance to the shore is also considered during this selection. You can see that the three areas selected have not the same distance to the highland, but after we need to mitigate in function of that. In terms of coactivity, we have analyzed also the coactivity on site, like pleasure or professional fishermen, sailing navigation, navigation hazard also, seabed property, and also the marine fauna and the presence of protected species. So after this selection and identification of installation area, for each location, we post-treat the current velocity. Based on the water depth and the need in terms of electricity at Molen, we select our P154 turbine and to put it onto gravity-based foundation in order to be protected by the swell, but also to avoid any visual impact. And on the right, you can see during the rising tide and during the ebb tide, the current velocity that we obtain on one point of installation of the turbine for several coefficients, mean in English from nip to spring tide. So in terms of conclusion of this project, we perform a high resolution numerical model that it can be used, of course, for next phase of this project, but also for all the people that we work onto the sea around Molen. We have highlighted 3 areas of interest for installation, and we investigate this area based on the criteria that I have presented to you. We propose a preliminary configuration of installation, for which we select 3 P144 turbine, and the installation of these 3 turbines can cover 5 to 10% of the electricity need at Molen. And this installation can save 22,000 liters of diesel by year and 60 tons of CO2. So in terms of approach, to install medium size like coastal tidal turbine close to the shore and consumer can be extended to other French islands like Seine and Chaussee, or to overseas territories. We have already installed a turbine in Guyana. We expect to install also in French Polynesia, but of course also for any isolated territory. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will enjoy to respond to any question regarding this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicolas, for this presentation. Another technology to produce energy for isolated territories and especially islands. We've had 3 different presentations, 3 different technologies. We have spoken about energy ships. We've spoken about tidal turbine. We've also been able to speak about energy storage with batteries. Interesting and a very interesting production of energy for isolated territories in the futures. I think some are really mature, some other one are not that mature, but show that we have a huge potential to decarbonize islands. I don't know if there is anybody who has some specific question for Felix, Joël, or Nicolas, or Peter. Well, if not, I have actually one question for the 3 and I say the 4 of you, but especially for the 3 of you, Felix, Joël, and Nicolas. My first question would be, what is the most complex thing you are facing on your projects? It means with Peter, we've been able to speak about many issues about production of energy. We have issues regarding regulation. We are things about the price or the cost of the energy production. We have also complex things regarding technical issues. So on your 3 projects, what are for you the most complex things?
So if I start with Farwind, so I would say that we, as a technology developer, we have a particular view of what the benefit that we bring and the value that we bring to potential islands. But actually, what is challenging is to get actually what's the real interest from the islanders directly of the technology that we bring. Typically, as I mentioned, sometimes they just want, so the first thing that they see is the renewable energy that you actually bring. But it was quite difficult for us, but then once we had it, it was perfect, to actually get the real value that they want to have. And in most cases, for us, it was the actual storage that we bring on top of the energy production and the power that we bring, because they want, and they have strong challenge for their grid actually, to have an increasing share of renewables, because it destabilizes the grid at some point. And once we actually get this insight from their point, it actually helps us to better understand what kind of benefit we can bring to islands. And this was, I think, it's one of the most challenging things that we have in the process. But and if I need to raise a second one, it will probably be the length of the process per se. It's always, so we need to start talking very early because there's a lot of investigation needed to be made. I mentioned those, the infrastructure for the port, but also the electrical infrastructure. Yeah, you need to be there on site every time to make things progress. And that's very positive, because this is how actually we do progress on both sides, and we co-construct the project.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much, Felix. I don't know, Joël or Nicolas, if you have any things to say about this. I mean, complex things you are facing on your project.
Yeah, perhaps I can add also some things. I'm in line with Corentin, with Felix. In fact, for us, we are not a big company yet, so sometimes it's very difficult to be able to sustain the length of the project process, because before to install tidal turbine, we need first to quantify the resources. So with ICE project, and we can make a preliminary analysis of Molen, but of course we need to have a detailed analysis, of course. And sometimes this process is very long, and it's very difficult for a startup company to be able to sustain all these steps. So perhaps we need to find a more efficient form of a project or consortium in project in order to be able to push forward this type of project. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Very interesting too.
For me, on our side, the difficulty is to find, I think, the most realistic project, because there are many renewable energy is interesting a lot of people, and there are many ideas and projects coming, and it's hard to say which innovation would be key innovation, as some innovation won't, and further the technical difficulty. It's really hard to say if one project would be really efficient, and some don't. And it's a problem also to have to find money to do the experiment, because a lot of projects are sometimes are looking good on the paper, and only the experience can give us the solution. Only the experience shows us the way where we have to go, where we have to go further. And I think Felix, Corentin, and Nicolas Ruiz have really understand this problem, and they do experimentation before going further in their development, because when you have the experience, you in the way to know if your solution is will be effective, and then you can go to a larger scale and have and maximize the energy product. And I think it's the major difficulty for us and for all of us. And it's not easy to identify if it's gonna be effective or not. That's the only main difficulty I see.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joël.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I actually think that your solutions are part of what we need in the future, and when we see the objective we have. And for example, Felix, you spoke about the objective of La Guadeloupe, which is, I think it's 2030, 100% renewable. We are far away from this objective.
Yeah,
but we know that we cannot but go in these directions. So maybe my last question will be to promote your solutions, to go further and maybe to go quicker. I understand that it's really long to implement your project. What do you need?
So this is a good question. So something, just a comment on your last sentence. Actually, the challenge is even bigger than we think, because the target is not to get only electricity autonomy, but to get energy autonomy. So, and the electricity is probably between 1/4 and 1/3 of the total energy demand on an island. So we need to actually get very fast. And this is probably going to be challenging to meet the 2030 deadline. Yeah, just to jump on your question, then I think what we need is to have traction and to get discussion with potential so with islanders directly that have an interest and that believe that we could be part of the solution in the shorter or in the midterm. And what we need is to get in touch, to visit and to actually discuss, to see, investigate if there is a really good opportunity. And I believe the project like ICE are very, let's say, are perfect to accelerate those process. And they make, so they create opportunities as well, because once you, with let's say, tenders like this, you can actually get in touch and you just don't go to the islanders and say, okay, I have a project, but that's from out of the blue. You can actually go and say, okay, we have a budget. It's not huge, but it's significant enough to actually progress and make this feasibility, so that we can see if, because at the end of the feasibility, you actually have enough material to go to a private partner or public partner and to raise funds afterwards. And this is actually bridging the first gap to actually make those projects possible.
Thank you, Felix. Joel or Nicolas, other input of what do you need to go faster?
I agree with Mr. Gorentin. The way is long and steps are small, but it's the only way we can go as far as possible. I would say the project has to be realistic. It's really a point, because we saw different projects maybe too optimistic or too ambitious, and it's good to be ambitious, but we have to connect ambition and pragmatism and realism to make it successful, because efficiency is really important, and we can't wait 50 more years, I think.
Definitely not.
Yeah, for me and Nicolas from Guinard, the one point also which is very long sometimes to obtain, mainly in France, is the permitting of installation. If you compare to foreign countries, so to implement tidal or river current turbine, it could be very long to have the permitting for installation, even if we progress in this way in France. I think one point also which is very important is to at the beginning of the project, to directly involve local community, local people, in order to facilitate after the acceptability of these people, and mainly in isolate area. they don't want to have the installation of a new production unit if they are not consulting at the beginning in terms of coactivity, in terms of visual impact or anything else. And the third point for me is also the difficulty that we can have to find fund and support to develop, in fact, this medium size or small size project. Because when we talk about electricity, renewable electricity to Molen or other highland, in fact, is not a multi-megawatt project. It's a several hundred kilowatt project or something like that. So means that sometimes it's difficult when you are intermediate size project to find the support and co-investment to be able to conduct this project at the end.
I fully agree.
Thank you very much for all your inputs, for your presentations, your answers. Thank you everybody to have been able to participate to this webinar this morning. Felix has been able to speak about consumer engagement, about islanders, and how do we convince them about what you are doing. And this is what we are going to speak about the 9th of December, speaking about energy consumption on islands and isolated territories. So we'll be happy to welcome you on the second webinar in December. So thank you very much, everybody, again, and hope to see you soon again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.